Hey folks, Turbine Guy coming back at you. Now today while I'm out enjoying the weather and producing some green energy for my house up there with my micro wind and solar power, I thought we'd get together and recap what happened at the recent Global Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland, where all these bigwigs and dignitaries had to get together and tell us how to go green, how to live our lives to save the planet. It is called COP26, and that stands for the Conference of Parties, and it's attended by countries that signed on in 1994 to an agreement or treaty with the UN. And this is the 26th meeting, thus COP26. Now, as I said, many VIPs, including Jeff Bezos, which I'm not sure what he has to do with climate change, except his company is one of the major polluters of carbon dioxide in the world, they flew there on over 400 private jets, sparking some fury. Okay, Scotland Sunday Mail, citing aviation sources, reported that more than 400 private jets were expected. They're said to be shuttling more than 1,000 VIPs and their staff to the talks, which according to the conference website, seeks to bring together world leaders to commit to urgent global climate action. Well, we've seen this before. We've seen lots of commitments and lots of talks, but it's only some countries, and that's part of the problem. There are only so many countries that are here, and not everybody is. And if they really think there's a problem, it's going to take everybody. Now, one of the worst offenders was U.S. President Joe Biden, who traveled on Air Force One, one of the biggest polluters there is as far as a private airplane could be. Leaders of Canada, France, Germany, India, Israel, and Japan all use their own aircraft as well. And those are just nation leaders. Those aren't business leaders. Well, the International Council on Clean Transportation says that commercial aviation accounts for about 2% of global carbon emissions, and that number is expected to triple by 2050, especially if we have more private jets. But private jets aren't even commercial, so those aren't included. The European advocacy group Transport and Environment said in a May report that private planes were 5 to 14 times as polluting as commercial planes on a per passenger basis and 50 times as polluting as trains, which makes me wonder why anybody from Europe would have flown there. Makes no sense at all. It can't be stressed enough how bad private jets are for the environment. It is the worst way to travel by miles, says a UK group's policy manager. Private jets are very prestigious, but it's difficult to avoid the hypocrisy of using one while claiming to be fighting climate change. Now, how much more true can that be? We all got to get together, fight climate change, but we're going to fly our private jets there because our time is more important than yours. Let's take a quick second to examine how much CO2 these private planes emit. Okay, now these people, or most of them, were at Rome for the G20 summit, and then they flew to Glasgow. So I'm going to ignore everything before getting to Rome, all the CO2 and other stuff they emitted getting to Rome. Let's just go from Rome to Glasgow. That's a 2 3/4 hour flight. At 189 gallons per hour for the average private jet, you're putting out 5.9 tons of CO2. With all the other gases that are thrown in, your CO2 equivalent is 11.3 tons that are being emitted. These planes carry up to 9 people, which they're probably not full the whole time, but if you divided it by 9, that's 1.2 to 1.3 tons per piece for that little 2 3/4 hour flight. Well, if we look at an average car that gets about 22 miles to the gallon, takes about 3 gallons an hour, over that 2 3/4 hour, we use 8 1/4 gallons. Multiply that times 20 pounds of CO2 per gallon, and you get 165 pounds of CO2 for that same driving time. 6 tons of CO2 versus 165 pounds. Big, big difference. Now, you've got Jeff Bezos of Amazon, who flew on his own $65 million Gulfstream jet. Birth Fund spokesperson told the Insider that the billionaire uses sustainable aviation fuel and offsets carbon emissions from his flights. I don't know how you offset an emission. I mean, you can plant a tree, but it could die, all kinds of different things. That's a little bit of hokey, this offsetting emissions thing. But he brings up an interesting point. What is sustainable aviation fuel? Is a clean substitute for fossil jet fuels rather than being refined from petroleum. SAF is produced from sustainable resources such as waste oils from biological origin, agri-residues, or non-fossil CO2. Basically, they're saying that they mix this stuff with the aviation gas, just like vegetable oil, process it or mix it to make it into a cleaner, I guess, and cleaner burning aviation fuel. Well, meanwhile, Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister, was going to fly from Glasgow back to London instead of merely hop a train like all the other British are forced to do. So talk about wasting and producing. It's in this guy's country, and he's got to fly to it. He can't just get there, I guess, efficiently or economically or green. Now, here's some comedy. U.S. President Joe Biden lashed out at Putin for staying at home for the COP26 climate conference, accusing his Russian counterpart of staying mum on his willingness to do anything to battle global warming. Now, if you notice, Biden didn't say anything about Xi Jinping out of China or anybody else who didn't show up to this. He's trying to pick on Putin. What did Putin do? Putin did it virtually. Putin saved the environment. Putin saved fuel. To me, Putin did what he should have done. You know, and Biden's comment, Putin's tundra is burning. Literally, his tundra is burning. He has serious climate problems, and he has been mum on his willingness to do anything. Well, that's really crazy. It's really crazy to me, especially given that Biden just recently, while he was in Italy, had an 85-car motorcade of limos, SUVs, and vans, none of which are fuel efficient, as he traveled around in Italy. So here we got the U.S. president blowing fuel everywhere, producing tons and tons and tons of CO2, trying to lecture another world leader on how to be green. I just shake my head. But I'll give you credit for Putin, his response. The tundra is indeed on fire, he said. At least Dmitry Peskov said on Wednesday. But let us not forget that forests are also burning in California, in Turkey, and elsewhere in the world, and we're all confronted with climate change. Russia is facing these challenges more than others. Well, pretty much because of the size of their country, and a lot of the effects that they have little control over. Well, we get to Greta Thurnberg now. A lot of things I don't agree with her on, being a libertarian green energy guy, promoting the green pill, which means common sense green energy. We have to find ways to empower people to go green. She said, build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, 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 she said in the speech. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders, words that sound great but so far have not led to action. Our hopes and ambitions drown in their empty promises. Gotta say, I agree with Greta. Someone who's been in this business with this micro wind and solar for over a decade, doing everything I can to facilitate and help others go green, all I've seen from the leaders are words and words, squandered money, and everything else. And you know what? This summit is a perfect example. Why did we have to have 400 private jets? Why did we have to have 400 private jets, including the president's, which includes a massive 244 horsepower called the Beast, in which he travels, his SUV? Why are these people getting together, shaking hands, slapping each other on the back, talking about what a great job they're doing? They're trying to tell us how to live. You know what? Here's what I say. Why don't we screw all of this summit stuff, all this global action, all these big commitments which are rarely fulfilled, and let's start getting rid of regulations. Let's start empowering the people like us to do it. So Turbine Guy's opinion, this global summit was a failure. It was a waste of energy, tremendous waste of energy. If the world leaders really want to start worrying about protecting the earth, keeping it green and saving the environment, how about let's draw down our military? How about let's stop fighting all these wars? Let's get rid of all this military stuff that is unregulated and pollutes anything than what we use. And let's just start focusing on living our life, being peaceful, coexisting neighbors, and quit trying to tell each other how to live. And to me, that includes when it goes green. You don't tell me how to do it, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to help you figure out what you can do. Turbine Guy, signing off.